Joining us now for tonight's big close-up is border czar Tom Homan. Tom, thank you so much for joining us. Mike's report there is a little bit disturbing when you hear that there's basically an all-points bulletin out by a street gang, the Latin Kings, on ICE agents. Are we seeing this kind of war between our federal government and these cartels and street gangs boiling up, or is it too soon to kind of make a determination on that?
Oh, no, it's there. It's been there, and it's getting worse. And I said, Joey, back in March on a Fox show, I said if the hateful rhetoric continues, especially from members of Congress, comparing ICE and Nazis and racists and the Gestapo, there's going to be bloodshed. This shooting at the Border Patrol in Chicago, just the latest shooting. We had a shooting at a Border Patrol facility in Texas a few months ago. That shooter was killed by Border Patrol. We had another guy showed up at an ICE office in Dallas, killed 2 detainees. He shot himself. Another guy showed up at a detention facility in Texas, wounded a local police officer that responded to the scene to help the ICE officers in that facility. Several aliens have been shot and killed during these operations. And the bottom line is the bloodshed is going to continue as long as the rhetoric continues, especially from members of Congress. It emboldens the bad guy to take actions against ICE and Border Patrol agents.
Yeah, you'd imagine Pritzker, Johnson would do something about it.
Well, Tom, it's great to talk to you. I want to stick with Chicago right now because their illustrious mayor, Brandon Johnson, is asking the United Nations to intervene to stop your operations. Here is what he said before the UN Human Rights Council. Listen to this.
The federal government's immigration enforcement has been marked by violence and an assault on the dignity of all Chicagoans. I call on this council to hold the federal government of the United States to the same standards of accountability you apply elsewhere in the world. No country should be above international law. I urge the Human Rights Council to consider additional measures of accountability, including a special session to examine the worsening human rights crisis in the United States.
Tom, this is just pure lunacy, but what is your reaction to all of that?
He's just proving he's not that smart, right? I mean, asking the United Nations to interfere with ICE enforcing U.S. law, it's like asking an arsonist how to stop a fire. Because the UN, remember, the IOM, the part of the UN, helped fund the mass migration during the Biden administration 4 years, spending millions upon millions of dollars helping that migration, international migration come to the United States. So, the United Nations is not going to tell President Trump what to do. President Trump was put in office on the promise of making this country safe again, on the promise of having the historic deportation operation. That's exactly what America is getting. Every criminal alien ICE and Border Patrol takes off the street makes this country safer. We have the most secure border in the history of the nation right now because of leadership of President Trump, the men and women of the Border Patrol, and because ICE. What ICE is doing in the interior every day, they've sent a message across the globe. Don't spend your life savings, cross the border illegally, think you're going to get away in the United States. Because of what ICE is doing, people aren't spending their life savings, putting themselves in harm's way. Thousands of people aren't dying making that journey. Thousands of Americans aren't dying from fentanyl because that's secure border. But the actions of the interior, the ICE and Border Patrol, has a lot to do why we have the most secure border in the history of this nation today.
And you're doing such a great job, Tom. Kevin Cork here. You're also limiting trafficking. People don't talk nearly enough about that. This administration has done so much to try to curtail what has been an absolute disaster for so many young women and children who've been trafficked across the border. Now, I want to turn for just a moment to ICE detainments. You may have read this. CBS is actually reporting that there are somewhere in the area of 66,000 detainees in ICE custody. That's a 70% increase, by the way, since the president took office, and it's a new record high. But there are others, Tom, reporting that ICE is now considering buying large warehouses to hold the influx of illegal aliens. And so I'm wondering tonight if you can give us any insight on this, and is capacity becoming a real issue? And if so, how are you dealing with it?
Well, I looked at the numbers about, an hour ago. We're about 65,000.
Okay.
But hold on tight, because we're going to soon be at 100,000. Right beginning of February, I spent hundreds of trips up to Capitol Hill talking with the senators and congressmen, the big, beautiful bill, telling them why we need 100,000 beds. And we're going to get those 100,000 beds very soon. And the reason why there's 100,000 beds, because an average bed turns over 10 times a year, right? The average length of stay is 30 to 35 days. So every ICE bed turns over 10 times a year. Well, you got 100,000 beds, and those beds turn over 10 times. What do you got? You got 1 million. So, 100,000 beds will come online soon. And so if people are having a fit about 65,000, you're going to really have a fit when 100,000 beds are online. That's what we need to do this operation. Everybody we arrest needs a bed, because we don't simply arrest somebody and put them on a plane within a half hour. They got to be bedded down. They got to get travel documents and plane arrangements and removal, itineraries put in place. So we need a bed for everybody arrest. So 100,000 beds was the game plan, and it's coming soon. And when we get 100,000 beds and 10,000 new agents, you think we're doing well now? We got historic number of deportations right now under President Trump. Those numbers going to pale in comparison to next year.
Hey, Tom, it's Nicole Sapphire. I want to switch gears, go to the New York City mayoral election. It took one day for Mayor-elect Zohran Mamdani to start threatening ICE. Take a listen.
Message to ICE agents and to everyone across this city is that everyone will be held to the same standard of the law. If you violate the law, you must be held accountable. And there is sadly a sense that is growing across this country that certain people are allowed to violate that law, whether they be the president or whether they be the agents themselves.
Now, Tom, you had mentioned earlier that political rhetoric such as this really emboldens these bad guys for violence against ICE officials. And the DHS has reported up to 800% increased assaults against ICE and Border Patrol officers this year, all while staffing remains stretched thin. So my question to you, Tom, is, what are we doing to protect these agents on the ground? Are the current laws strong enough to deter violence against them, or does Congress need to do more?
Well, Pam Bondi and Department of Justice really stepped up. I looked at the number of Title 18, United States Code 111. That's the impeding and interfering ICE law enforcement officers, just federal law enforcement officers, and we're at historic level of prosecutions. We're going to continue to prosecute. So Mamdani needs to take a look at what happened in Chicago. Mayor Johnson's pushing back. He's not helping. But guess what? We're arresting thousands of people in Chicago every week. We're going to arrest people there tonight. We're going to arrest people there tomorrow. All these mayors who don't want their community safer, they can scream and yell and protest all they want. We're going to be out there tomorrow, we're going to be out the next day. And like I said months ago, in sanctuary cities like Chicago and New York, we will flood the zone. The more agents we hire, we're hiring 10,000 new officers. They'll be flooding the zone in sanctuary cities. Why? Because we know we have a problem in sanctuary cities. We know they're releasing public safety threats from their jails every day back in the community. If he was smart, he led us into Rikers Island so we can arrest a bad guy in the safety and security of a jail rather than him releasing people to the street to reoffend against citizens of the city. So we're going to make New York safer again, with or without him. We would like his partnership, but if you want to stand by and let us do his job for him, that's what we'll do. We're going to make New York safer, New York City safer. President Trump made that promise, and we're keeping that promise. Every criminal alien we take off the street of Chicago, Los Angeles, New York, makes those neighborhoods safer. So you ought to be calling President Trump up and thanking him for making his neighborhood safer.
Tom Homan, thank you so much for joining us. Thanks for bringing all this information, and again, good luck with all the work you're doing.
Thank you, Tom.
Thanks, Tom.
Thanks, Tom.
You got it.
Yes, sir. Okay, Tommy, a lot to unpack there. We're going to do it quickly. We started the conversation about the Latin Kings, and we went all the way down to Zohran Mamdani. Maybe what we're learning is their ideas aren't that far apart. I don't know. The Latin Kings is an American gang, but what people don't understand is they're allied with the Sinaloa cartel. So they're Americans in this country doing the work of cartels. So when you take that and you look at what Brendan Johnson said, and you look at what Pritzker said, and then you look at what Zohran Mamdani said, and what Homan just said, which is this idea that if we don't have law and order in our cities, that's what feeds this border problem. So it's all intertwined.
Oh, of course it is. I got to tell you, every time I listen to Tom Homan, I just get a jolt of enthusiasm and inspiration. I love listening to him. He is no nonsense. Nothing is going to deter him from his mission. Not threats, not these mayors, not these governors, not nothing. Protest, scream, yell, it doesn't matter. this administration will fulfill their promise of mass deportations. Quick note on the beds that he mentioned there. This has been something that the American people haven't been given full transparency on in previous administrations. Democrats have fought tooth and nail to decrease the number of beds because they want catch and release. They don't want to keep these illegal aliens in custody. They want them out on the streets, and then, oh, they got to track them down. And then, yeah, guess what? They weren't tracking them down. This border czar says, no, we want more beds because we're going to carry out mass deportations, like it or not. That's the law. Don't like the law? Change it. Best of luck.
You know what the interesting is? I mean, the joke's on Mamdani. In that song we played, it said, if you violate the law, you must be held accountable. That's out of his mouth. Well, guess what? That's what ICE is doing.
Bingo.
It's constitutional law. They're removing criminal illegal aliens.
Yeah, I would imagine that the
law.
alligator Alcatrazes would be a deterrent. I think, you know, maybe they're okay.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.